Lisa sat beside her daughter Lily on their exasperatingly delayed flight, her patience stretched thin as she tried to keep Lily occupied with a bright, colorful coloring book. The cabin buzzed with a low, persistent hum of discontent. Passengers murmured in frustration, their voices merging into a dissonant symphony of impatience. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. The air conditioning's ceaseless drone barely masked the collective irritation simmering throughout the plane. Lisa cast yet another glance at her watch, feeling a familiar wave of frustration rising within her. They had been ensnared in this interminable delay for nearly an hour, with no clear explanation or reassurance from the flight crew. "Mommy, why aren't we flying yet?" Lily's question, framed by her large, wide-eyed curiosity, pierced through the hum of discontent like a ray of sunshine. "I'm not entirely sure, sweetheart," Lisa replied, her smile strained yet earnest. "Sometimes these things just take longer than we expect." Just then, the cabin door creaked open, and an elderly man appeared, his entrance marked by an aura of visible struggle. Every step he took was a slow, deliberate effort, his leg dragging and his gait hindered by a pronounced limp. His laborious movements were accompanied by the visible strain of hauling a hefty carry-on bag, the weight of which seemed to bear down on him both physically and emotionally. A few sympathetic glances from nearby passengers highlighted the contrast between the old man's visible struggle and the disdain of others. As he made his way down the aisle, the man's efforts were met with an air of begrudging tolerance from some, while others seemed more engrossed in their frustrations. The cabin's collective mood shifted subtly as the man's presence, marked by his palpable discomfort, brought a new layer of reality to the delay. Lisa watched with a mix of empathy and concern. She nudged Lily gently. "Let's see if we can help him, okay?" Lily, sensing her mother's intention, nodded eagerly. As the man drew closer, Lisa stood up, offering a kind smile. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you with your bag?" The elderly man looked up, surprise and relief mingling in his eyes. "Oh, thank you, dear. I'd appreciate that." Lisa took the bag from him, noting its weight and the way it seemed to weigh on the man's shoulders as much as on his arm. With Lily holding tightly to her side, Lisa helped the man find his seat, offering him a supportive arm as he carefully settled into his spot. "Thank you so much," the man said, his voice tinged with gratitude. "It's been a rough journey so far." "It's no trouble at all," Lisa assured him. "We're all in this together." As Lisa returned to her seat, she glanced around the cabin. The atmosphere had shifted slightly. The collective frustration seemed to have momentarily eased, replaced by a subtle sense of shared humanity. Even the most impatient passengers appeared to have softened, their frowns replaced by contemplative looks. Lily, still clutching her coloring book, turned to her mother with a smile. "I'm glad we helped him, Mommy." Lisa hugged her daughter close, feeling a renewed sense of patience and perspective. "Me too, sweetheart. Sometimes a small act of kindness can make a big difference." The plane's delay continued, but now it felt a little more bearable. The cabin's hum of discontent had transformed into a softer, more understanding murmur. Lisa knew the flight would eventually take off, and though the delay was far from ideal, it sparked a moment of connection and empathy that reminded her of the importance of kindness, even amid frustration. As the elderly man made his way down the narrow aisle towards his seat by the window at the rear of the plane, his carry-on bag accidentally brushed against the arm of a wealthy passenger. This man, immaculately dressed in a finely tailored suit, looked up with an expression of sheer contempt. "Watch where you're going," he snapped, his voice dripping with condescension. "Do you even have any idea what you're doing?" The elderly man, taken aback and dismayed, mumbled a hurried apology and continued his laborious trek. Reaching his seat, He attempted to lift his carry-on into the overhead compartment. His hands, trembling with age and fatigue, struggled to manage the bag's considerable weight. Despite his best efforts, the bag slipped from his grasp, tumbling downward and striking the wealthy passenger seated directly beneath. The wealthy man's reaction was immediate and explosive. He shot out of his seat, his face contorted into a mask of rage and disdain. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" he bellowed, his voice reverberating through the cabin. "Are you trying to injure someone with that bag?" The elderly man stammered an apology, his voice quavering and his hands shaking uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to?" The wealthy man's voice rose in a high, scornful pitch. "Why are people like you even allowed on this flight? You're a danger to everyone around you." Lisa felt a surge of hot, searing anger flush through her as she listened to the wealthy man's cruel, unforgiving words. Her gaze swept across the cabin, noting the discomfort etched on the faces of other passengers, but no one dared to intervene or speak up. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and Lisa struggled to keep her composure for Lily's sake. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the boiling tempest of indignation that roiled within her. The elderly man's hands shook as he finally managed to secure his bag in the overhead compartment. His face, lined with years of hardship and sorrow, betrayed his deep embarrassment and distress. The wealthy man, unmoved and unapologetic, continued to glare with disdain, offering no help or compassion. Lisa's heart ached for the old man's plight, and she knew she could no longer remain a passive observer of this injustice. Just as Lisa steeled herself to stand up and confront the cruelty of the wealthy man, a voice crackled over the intercom, announcing a brief update from the flight attendants. The announcement provided a momentary distraction from the charged atmosphere, but Lisa's resolve to address the situation remained unshaken. Her sense of justice burned brightly, and she knew that standing up for the elderly man was not just a matter of personal conviction, but a necessity in the face of such blatant disregard for human dignity. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts. We are about to take off," came the announcement over the intercom, a beacon of hope amidst the tension. Lisa sighed deeply, her frustration simmering beneath the surface. She glanced at the wealthy man, silently wishing for a modicum of respect from him during the flight. As the plane began its taxi down the runway, Lisa focused her attention on Lily, who was now absorbed in her coloring book, adding bursts of color to the pages with quiet concentration. The plane ascended into the sky, and as the seatbelt sign turned off, Lisa allowed herself a small sigh of relief, hoping that the remainder of the flight would pass without further conflict. However, her hopes were quickly dashed. The wealthy man, unable to contain his dissatisfaction, started shifting in his seat with exaggerated motions, muttering loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. His actions were designed to draw attention, and he soon pressed the call button for the flight attendant. His voice, dripping with contempt, carried across the cabin. "I need to move," he declared, his tone sharp and dismissive. "I can't sit here. The smell from that old man is making me nauseous." The flight attendant approached her demeanor with a blend of professional politeness and firm resolve. "Sir, please keep your voice down. What seems to be the problem?" "The problem," the wealthy man said, jabbing a finger toward the elderly man, "is him. I can't sit next to someone who reeks of a hospital. It's disgusting." Lisa felt a surge of indignation well up inside her. She could no longer remain a silent observer. Standing up with resolve, her voice steady and commanding, she addressed the wealthy man directly. "That's enough. This man deserves respect, not your degrading insults." The wealthy man turned to Lisa, his face contorted with irritation. "And who do you think you are?" "It's everyone's business when someone is being treated unfairly," Lisa replied, her gaze unwavering. "This man is a veteran who has served our country with honor. He deserves our respect and gratitude, not your scornful remarks." A hush fell over the cabin as passengers turned to witness the confrontation. Lisa's voice grew stronger, imbued with a sense of righteous indignation. "My daughter and I will give up our seats, so this gentleman can be more comfortable. He deserves far better than to be subjected to such disrespect." Turning to Lily, who was now watching with wide, concerned eyes, Lisa said, "Lily, we're going to let this gentleman have your seat. You'll sit on my lap for the rest of the flight, okay?" Lily nodded solemnly, her small face serious. "Okay, Mommy." The wealthy man spluttered, "You can't just." But his protest was drowned out as several other passengers began to voice their support for Lisa's stance. "She's right," one man said, his voice resolute. "Show some respect." Another woman chimed in, "You should be ashamed of yourself." The flight attendant stepped in, her voice authoritative and firm. "Sir, please keep your voice down and show some respect for your fellow passengers. Mom, if you and your daughter would like to switch seats, we'll assist you in making the necessary arrangements." Lisa nodded in appreciation and began helping Lily gather her things. The elderly man looked at Lisa, his eyes reflecting gratitude and a hint of surprise. "Thank you, miss. You didn't have to go through all this trouble." Lisa offered a warm, genuine smile. "It's the least we can do. You deserve to travel comfortably and with dignity." With the flight attendant's help, the elderly man moved to the seats adjacent to Lisa and Lily. The old man settled into Lily's former seat with visible relief, while Lily took her place on Lisa's lap, her small frame fitting snugly against her mother. The wealthy man huffed in silent resentment, casting one last scornful glare at Lisa before turning away. Lisa and Lily navigated the narrow aisle towards their new seats at the back of the plane, moving with a renewed sense of purpose. The elderly man followed slowly, his steps still unsteady, but now marked by a palpable sense of relief. The flight attendant adjusted their seating arrangement to ensure everyone was comfortably settled, a quiet testament to the empathy and support that had emerged amidst the tension. As Lisa gently lifted Lily onto her lap and secured her with the seatbelt, she brushed a stray lock of hair from her daughter's face and asked softly, "Are you okay, sweetie?" Lily looked up with a mix of awe and comfort in her eyes. "Yes, Mommy, I'm okay." Lisa smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment and peace settle over her. The flight continued, now marked by a newfound sense of respect and solidarity, a small victory amid an otherwise challenging day. Lily's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she glanced at the elderly man settling into the seat beside them. "Mommy, who's that man?" Lisa followed Lily's gaze toward Richard, who had finally made himself comfortable. "He's a very special person, sweetheart. You'll find out soon." Richard, having found his place, leaned back with a profound sigh of relief. His face, etched with lines of experience and gratitude, reflected the weight of the moment. "Thank you again," he said softly, his voice carrying a note of deep appreciation. "I didn't expect such kindness." Lisa's smile was warm and reassuring. "It's truly no trouble at all. We're happy to help. I'm Lisa, by the way, and this is my daughter, Lily." Richard's smile was gentle and kind as he introduced himself. "I'm Richard. It's a pleasure to meet both of you." As the plane soared through the sky, Lisa's gaze fell upon the military hat resting on Richard's lap. The faded insignia spoke of years gone by, hinting at a lifetime of service and sacrifice. Her curiosity was piqued, and she couldn't help but notice the photo album peeking from his carry-on bag. "That's an interesting hat," Lisa remarked, nodding toward it. "Were you in the military?" Richard's eyes softened as he looked down at the hat, a nostalgic smile curling his lips. "Yes, I served for many years. It feels like a lifetime ago." Lily, ever the inquisitive child, leaned in closer. Did you fight in wars? Richard's gaze grew distant, and he nodded. Yes, I did. I was in World War II and the Korean War. Lisa's eyes widened in awe and respect. That's incredible. Thank you so much for your service. Richard waved off her thanks with modesty. I did what I had to do, just like so many others. We all did our part. Lily's curiosity remained unabated as she looked at Richard with wide, earnest eyes. Did you get hurt? Richard hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, I did. I got this limp from a bullet wound. There are still some pieces of shrapnel in my leg. Lisa and Lily listened intently as Richard began to recount his experiences. I remember one particular battle in Korea, Richard said, his voice tinged with the weight of memory. We were ambushed, and it was chaos everywhere. My best friend Jack and I were side by side, fighting our way out. Lily's voice was a whisper of concern. What happened to Jack? Richard's expression clouded with sorrow as he responded. Jack didn't make it. He saved my life, though, pulling me out of the line of fire, but he was hit. I carry his memory with me every day. Lisa reached out, her hand gently touching Richard's arm. I'm so sorry. That must have been incredibly hard. Richard nodded, his eyes reflecting the depth of his grief. War leaves scars not just on the body but on the heart. I've lost many friends, and those memories never fade. Lisa's voice was soft and empathetic as she asked, what was it like being in the midst of it all? Richard took a deep breath, his voice reflecting the profound impact of his experiences. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. You never knew if you'd make it to the next day, but we had each other, and that made it bearable. We were like brothers. The plane hit a bout of turbulence, causing Lily to cling to Lisa with wide, apprehensive eyes. Richard reached over, patting her hand with a comforting touch. It's okay, little one. Just a little bump in the road. Lily looked up at him, her fear melting into a smile. Thank you, Mr. Richard. Richard's eyes softened with affection as he responded. You're very welcome, Lily. As the turbulence subsided and the plane stabilized, the flight attendant approached to check on them. Lisa seized the opportunity to express her gratitude. Thank you for helping us switch seats. It truly means a lot. The flight attendant's smile was warm and understanding. I'm glad we could make things more comfortable for everyone. Is there anything else you need? Lisa shook her head with a grateful smile. We're fine, thank you. The cabin returned to a serene calm, the shared moments of empathy and kindness weaving a comforting sense of unity among the passengers. Lisa glanced at Richard, feeling a profound sense of connection and respect for the man whose bravery and sacrifice had touched their hearts. As the flight continued, Lisa found herself deeply moved by Richard's stories and his humility. There was a profound connection she felt to him, a shared sense of humanity that transcended the generations separating them. His presence was both calming and inspiring, and Lisa realized how much she valued the opportunity to hear his experiences firsthand. Lily, ever curious, pointed to Richard's carry-on bag. Mr. Richard, what's that? She asked, her eyes wide with innocent wonder. Lisa gently admonished her. Lily, it's not polite to ask about other people's things. Richard's smile was kind and understanding. It's all right, Lisa. She's just curious with that. He reached into his bag and carefully pulled out a well-worn photo album. This is a collection of memories from my time in the military. Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. Can we see? Richard nodded warmly. Of course. I'd be happy to share it with you both. Lisa and Lily leaned in closer as Richard opened the album, revealing pages filled with black and white photographs. Each image seemed to carry with it a story, a moment frozen in time. Richard's hands, though slightly trembling, turned the pages with a sense of reverence. "This is from my time in World War II," Richard began, pointing to a photo of a group of young soldiers. "We were just kids, really full of hope and bravery, not knowing what awaited us." Lisa leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "Who are they?" she asked, genuinely interested. Richard smiled, though his eyes held a depth of sorrow. "These were my comrades. We went through hell and back together." "That's John," he said, pointing to a tall, strong-looking man standing beside him in the photo. "He was my best friend." Lisa noticed the emotional shift in Richard's tone as he spoke about John. There was a deep reverence and a palpable sense of loss that colored his words. She could see the emotional weight these photos carried for him. "John saved my life more times than I can count," Richard continued. "There was one time in Korea when things were especially dire. We were caught in an ambush, bullets flying everywhere. John pulled me out of the line of fire, but he didn't make it." Lisa felt a lump in her throat, struggling to find the right words. "I'm so sorry, Richard." Richard nodded, his gaze distant and reflective. "War leaves scars not just on the body but on the heart. I still have shrapnel in my leg from that day, but the real pain is losing friends like John." Lily, who had been listening quietly, reached out and touched Richard's arm with a gentle, innocent curiosity. "Did it hurt a lot, Mr. Richard?" Richard smiled gently at her concern. "Yes, Lily, it did. But we did it because we believed in protecting our country and each other." As Richard turned another page, Lisa's attention was drawn to a particular photograph that caught her eye. It was a picture of Richard and John both smiling broadly, despite the grim backdrop of war. The familiarity of John's face tugged at Lisa's memory, creating a deep sense of déjà vu. "Who took this photo?" Lisa asked, pointing to the image. "One of our fellow soldiers," Richard replied. "It was taken just a few days before that ambush. We were trying to keep our spirits high, despite the looming danger." Lisa's heart raced as she scrutinized the photo. The resemblance between John and her grandfather was too strong to ignore. Trying to steady her voice, she asked, "Richard, do you have any other photos of John?" Richard nodded and flipped through a few more pages. Each photo depicted moments of camaraderie and struggle, but the faces remained familiar. Finally, he paused at a photo that seemed to hold particular significance. "This one was taken right before the ambush," Richard said, his voice filled with a mix of pride and sadness. "John and I had a feeling something was coming, but we wanted to keep our spirits up." Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she took a closer look. The man in the photo bore an uncanny resemblance to her grandfather. Her breath caught in her throat as the realization hit her. "Richard," she began, her voice shaking, "I think John might be my grandfather." Richard's eyes widened in shock and surprise. "Your grandfather?" Lisa nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I remember seeing photos of him when I was a child. My mother used to tell me stories about how he saved lives during the war, but never came back." Richard's face was a portrait of astonishment and emotion. "I can't believe it," he said softly, a mixture of awe and disbelief in his voice. "It sounds like John was your grandfather. He was a remarkable man, and he had a profound impact on everyone he met." Lisa's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and sadness. "Thank you for sharing these memories with us, Richard. It means so much to know more about him." Richard's eyes were misty as he nodded. "I'm honored to share his story with you. He was a hero, and his memory lives on through the stories and the people he touched." The plane continued its journey, the cabin filled with a new sense of connection and shared humanity. Lisa and Lily sat in quiet reflection, deeply moved by the unexpected encounter and the bridge it had built across time and generations. Richard's expression softened with a blend of surprise and sadness. "If John was your grandfather, then I owe him my life. He was the bravest man I ever knew." The realization hit Lisa like a tidal wave. Her grandfather, the man who had been the hero of countless family stories, was the same John who had saved Richard's life. A torrent of emotions surged through her: shock, admiration, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for sharing this with me. I never knew the full story." Richard reached out and gently took her hand. "Thank you for listening and for letting me remember. Your grandfather was a hero, and it's an honor to have known him." Sensing the gravity of the moment, Lily snuggled closer to her mother. "Mommy, is Mr. Richard talking about Grandpa?" Lisa nodded, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Lily, Mr. Richard knew your great-grandpa. He was very brave." The remainder of the flight seemed to blur into a hazy background as Lisa and Richard continued sharing stories and memories. As the plane began its descent, Lisa's mind raced with the implications of what she had learned. She felt a profound connection to Richard and knew she had to take a step to honor the memory of her grandfather. Once the plane had landed and passengers began disembarking, Lisa turned to Richard. "Mr. Richard," she said, her voice tinged with anticipation, "I have a favor to ask. Would you join Lily and me for a short trip? There's someone I'd like you to meet." Richard looked at her, curiosity etched on his face. "A trip? Where to?" Lisa smiled warmly, trying to ease his uncertainty. "It's not far, just a short drive from here. I think it will be worth your time." Richard hesitated, glancing at his watch. "I don't want to impose." "You won't be imposing at all," Lisa assured him. "I think you'll be very glad you came." After a moment of consideration, Richard nodded. "All right then, I trust you." They gathered their belongings and made their way through the terminal. Lisa felt a mix of nerves and excitement. She hadn't planned for this, but it felt undeniably right. As they reached the parking lot, she led Richard to her car, helping him into the passenger seat while Lily climbed into the back. The drive through the suburban area was initially quiet, with the hum of the car engine providing a soothing backdrop. Richard looked out the window, absorbing the scenery with a hint of curiosity. "Where are we headed?" he asked. "You'll see," Lisa replied with a knowing smile, exchanging a glance with Lily, who giggled softly. Chapter 7: The Reunion. After a short drive, they arrived at a quaint, charming house nestled in a peaceful, tree-lined neighborhood. The house exuded a nostalgic warmth, with its well-tended garden and welcoming front porch. Richard's curiosity grew as they approached the front door. "This is where I grew up," Lisa explained. "My father still lives here." She led Richard inside, where the comforting scent of home enveloped them. They walked through the cozy living room, adorned with family photos, and into the kitchen. Lisa's father, Michael, was preparing tea. He looked up and smiled warmly at their arrival. "Hi, Dad," Lisa greeted him with a hug. "This is Richard. Richard, this is my father, Michael." Michael extended his hand with a welcoming smile. "Nice to meet you, Richard." Richard shook his hand, nodding politely. "Nice to meet you too, Michael." Before anyone could say more, an elderly man entered the room. He moved slowly but with a dignified presence, and his eyes lit up when he saw Richard. Lisa watched as recognition dawned on both men's faces. John Richard's voice was a whisper filled with awe and disbelief. The room fell silent as the two men stood facing each other, their expressions a mix of astonishment and reverence. Michael, observing the exchange with a mixture of curiosity and understanding, quietly stepped back, allowing the moment to unfold. John, whose face was etched with the lines of age and experience, took a tentative step forward. His eyes, though clouded with time, were sharp with recognition and emotion. "Richard," he murmured, his voice cracking slightly. Richard nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "It's me, John. I never thought I'd see you again." John's face broke into a smile, his eyes moistening. "You were always in my thoughts, Richard. I've missed you." The two men embraced, their reunion filled with a silent, profound gratitude that words could not capture. Lisa and Lily stood by, witnessing the touching moment that bridged the past with the present, a testament to the enduring bonds of friendship forged in the crucible of war. As they pulled away, John's gaze shifted to Lisa and Lily. "So this is your family?" he asked, his voice filled with warmth and pride. Lisa nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. "Yes, Dad, this is Richard. He knew Grandpa, and his stories have helped me understand him better." John's eyes shone with a mix of pride and nostalgia. "Your grandfather was a remarkable man. It's a blessing to reconnect with an old friend and share these memories." The room was filled with a sense of peace and fulfillment as the three generations came together, united by the legacy of courage, sacrifice, and the timeless bonds of friendship. Richard John's voice cracked with emotion as he took in the sight of his old comrade. The two men embraced, their reunion a poignant reminder of their shared past. Lisa stood back, her eyes misty with emotion. The moment was surreal yet deeply fulfilling. Her grandfather, whose stories had shaped her childhood, was now reunited with his wartime friend, the man who had been instrumental in saving his life. As they sat down for tea, the room filled with laughter and shared memories. Lisa listened with rapt attention as Richard and John recounted tales from their past, each story unveiling new layers of their bond and bravery. Lily, perched on her mother's lap, absorbed the stories with wide-eyed fascination. She glanced at her great-grandfather with admiration and curiosity. As the evening drew to a close, Lisa felt a profound sense of closure and connection. She had bridged a gap between generations, uncovering a piece of her family's history and honoring the legacy of those who had come before her. "Thank you, Richard," Lisa said sincerely as they prepared to leave, "for sharing your story and for being a part of this reunion." Richard smiled warmly, his eyes reflecting a deep sense of fulfillment. "Thank you, Lisa. This has been a meaningful experience for me too. It's a reminder of the enduring bonds of friendship and the power of shared history." As Lisa and Lily drove back home, the setting sun casts a golden glow over the landscape. Lisa felt a deep sense of gratitude and peace, knowing that she had honored her grandfather's memory and connected with someone who had been a significant part of his life. The journey had been more than just a flight and a visit. It had been a profound exploration of legacy, friendship, and the enduring impact of shared experiences. "Maybe it was fate," Richard said quietly. "Maybe it was meant to be that I met Lisa and came here. It's like a chapter in our lives that needed to be closed." John smiled, his eyes twinkling. "I believe that, and now that we're together again, let's make the most of it." As the evening drew to a close, Lisa and Michael prepared a guest room for Richard. "Why don't you stay with us for a while?" Michael suggested. "You and John have a lot of catching up to do." Richard hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that, thank you." The next morning, the house was filled with the warm scent of breakfast. John and Richard sat at the table, continuing their conversation as if no time had passed. The days that followed were filled with shared meals, long walks, and deep conversations. They laughed over old memories and created new ones, cherishing each moment. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, John turned to Richard. "You know, Richard, we should take a trip together, visit some of the places we fought, and pay our respects." Richard's eyes lit up with excitement. "I'd love that. It would be a journey worth taking." Lisa and Michael, overhearing their conversation, came out to join them. "That sounds like a wonderful idea," Lisa said. "You both deserve it." Michael nodded in agreement. "We'll help you plan it. It'll be a trip to remember." John and Richard smiled at each other, their hearts filled with anticipation. "Let's do it," John said, "for old time's sake." Over the next week, they began planning their trip, poring over maps and discussing the places they wanted to visit. Lisa and Michael assisted with the logistics, ensuring everything was arranged for their journey. As Richard prepared to leave for his own home to pack for the trip, he hugged Lisa and Michael warmly. "Thank you for everything. This has been more than I could have ever hoped for." Lisa smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "It's been our pleasure, Richard. You're part of our family now." Lily, holding onto Richard's hand, looked up at him with wide eyes. "Will you come back and visit us, Mr. Richard?" Richard knelt down to her level, his smile gentle. "Of course, Lily. I'll be back before you know it, and I'll have lots of stories to tell you." With heartfelt farewells and promises to keep in touch, Richard left for home, his heart full of gratitude and anticipation for the journey ahead. Lisa watched him go, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The threads of history had been woven together, creating a tapestry of connection and understanding that would be cherished for years to come. As Richard and John embarked on their journey, Lisa and Michael watched them drive away, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. They had not only reunited two old friends, but had also forged new connections that would last a lifetime. The journey had been unexpected, filled with moments of surprise and revelation, but it was also deeply meaningful, a reminder of the importance of connection, memory, and respect. Several weeks later, Lisa stood on the porch, looking down the road expectantly. She had been eagerly awaiting this day. Lily was beside her, bouncing with excitement. "Do you think they had fun, Mommy?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with anticipation. "I'm sure they did, sweetheart," Lisa replied, her heart full of warmth. A familiar car appeared in the distance, and Lily's excitement grew as it pulled into the driveway. She couldn't contain herself any longer and ran down to greet it. The car doors opened, and Richard and John stepped out, looking rejuvenated. Their faces, once marked with years of worry and regret, now shone with joy and vitality. "Grandpa." "Mr. Richard," Lily cried, her voice ringing with happiness. John scooped her up in a big hug. "Hello, darling. We've missed you," Richard smiled warmly at the sight of Lily's enthusiasm. "Hi there, Lily. We've got so many stories to tell you." Lisa approached, her own heart swelling with emotion. "Welcome home," she said, hugging both men. "You look wonderful." "We feel wonderful," John replied, his eyes sparkling. It was an incredible trip. That evening, as they gathered around the dinner table, the atmosphere was filled with laughter and storytelling. Lisa had prepared a hearty meal, and the aroma filled the cozy kitchen. The sense of family was strong. "So tell us everything," Lisa said, eager to hear about their journey. John and Richard exchanged a look, smiling. "Well," Richard began, "we visited Normandy first. Standing on those beaches again was indescribable. We remembered our comrades and honored their memories. It was deeply moving." John nodded. "We also went to Korea, revisiting old battlefields. But it wasn't just about the places, it was about the people we met along the way, fellow veterans and their families. It was a shared journey of healing." Richard's eyes twinkled with mischief. "And we had some fun too. Remember that night in Paris?" John chuckled. "How could I forget? We ended up in a little cafe, sharing stories with locals until the early hours. It felt like we were young again." Lily's eyes were wide with fascination. "Did you bring back any souvenirs?" John nodded and reached into his bag, pulling out a small hand-carved wooden box. "This is for you, Lily. We found it in a market in Seoul. It's a traditional Korean music box." Lily opened it carefully, and a delicate tune filled the room. Her face lit up with delight. "Thank you, Grandpa." "Thank you, Mr. Richard." Richard smiled, watching Lily's joy. "You're very welcome, Lily. We thought of you often during our travels." As dinner continued, the stories flowed easily, each one bringing more laughter and memories. It was clear that the trip had been transformative for both men. They seemed lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Towards the end of the meal, Lisa cleared her throat, looking at Richard with a thoughtful expression. "Richard, we've been talking, and we'd like to ask you something." Richard raised an eyebrow, curious. "What's that?" Lisa glanced at John, who nodded in encouragement. "We'd like you to stay with us permanently. John needs someone close, someone who understands him, and we'd love to have you as part of our family." Richard's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you sure? I wouldn't want to impose." "You wouldn't be imposing at all," John interjected, his voice firm. "We've spent so many years apart, thinking the other was gone. Now that we're together again, I don't want to waste another moment." Lisa nodded in agreement. "You've become a part of our lives, Richard. It would mean the world to us if you stayed." Richard looked around the table, seeing the hopeful faces of John, Lisa, and little Lily. His heart swelled with emotion. "I'd be honored," he said softly. "Thank you. Thank you all." Lily clapped her hands, delighted by the news. "Yay, Mr. Richard is staying." That night, as they settled into the living room, Richard felt a deep sense of belonging. He was surrounded by people who cared for him, people who understood the weight of his past and shared in the joy of his present. John raised a glass, his voice filled with emotion. "To the family old and new, and to the memories we've made and the ones we'll continue to create together." They all raised their glasses, the clinking sound a symbol of unity and hope. Richard looked around, feeling a profound sense of peace. He had found his place, not just in a home, but in the hearts of those who had welcomed him so warmly. The journey that had begun with an unexpected flight had led him to a new beginning, one filled with love, laughter, and the promise of many more stories to come. As the evening drew to a close, Lisa watched the two old friends share a quiet conversation, their faces glowing with contentment. She felt grateful for the unexpected journey that had brought them all together. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by the warmth of family, Richard knew that he was finally home. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I did. This heartfelt tale of friendship and gratitude struck a chord with me. It's a powerful reminder of the enduring bonds we form and the profound impact small acts of kindness can have. Lisa and Lily's compassion brought Richard and John back together after decades of believing the other was lost. Their reunion, filled with shared memories and new adventures, shows us the unbreakable bonds formed in the toughest times. Lisa's gesture of inviting Richard to stay highlighted the power of family and community. It's a beautiful example of how inclusivity and support can bring profound healing and joy. This story teaches us about resilience, the importance of connection, and the value of honoring our past while embracing new beginnings. It's never too late to reconnect, heal, and make new memories. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey. We've witnessed the profound impact of connection, kindness, and shared experiences, from the reunion of old friends to small acts of compassion during life's delays. Each story has highlighted how moments of empathy and understanding can transform our interactions and strengthen our relationships. So what have you learned from today's stories? How can these lessons of kindness, patience, and connection be applied to your own life? I'd love to hear from you. Please share one thing you've learned and plan to bring into practice in your life in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring content. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more stories and insights that resonate with the heart. Until next time, take care and stay positive.